by the Institute of Security Studies alongside the GAP think tank has found that South Africa is likely entering a phase of ongoing and violent instability. Now, according to the study, this is due to the ANC's failure to manage elite contestations within its ranks since 2007, resulting in tensions spilling out to the streets. To help me unpack this, I'll be joined in a moment by Heywood, Director of Government and Public Policy at the think tank at the Institute of Security Studies. We also have political analyst Rebone Tau and Mark Heywood, human rights and social justice activist. You're a part of the conversation tonight on WhatsApp. Send us your thoughts and questions and comments on 072-110-5584. The real question we're asking tonight, is there a political settlement that can be reached to pacify the contesting elites in the context, of course, of the rule of law and the parameters set thereby? Let's hear your views tonight. Otherwise, you can tweet us at Newzroom 405. Mark, Rebone, good evening, and thank you very much for your time and joining us tonight here on In Focus. If you look at this report, interesting developments. It's not a new thing. Some have attempted it, but of course, this time around, it's looking closely at a phenomenon which they say around 2004 and 2007, you saw a rise in protests, and around the period when former President Jacob Zuma was in office, there was incredible stability without the fact that there were decays in institutional establishments in the country, as well as, for example, the economy. And now with the current administration of President Cyril Ramaphosa, they've seen, I suppose, a dramatic increase in protests. And this, of course, leading them to the conclusion that there is no correlation between the protests and the people being unhappy with service delivery and the socioeconomic conditions. Of course, that is an argument that can be argued in itself. But what was also interesting was the fact that they point out to the elite contestations being the key drivers behind these protests and instability. So to take the conversation forward, I wanted to talk a little bit about whether there is a political settlement that could be reached between the contesting elites at this particular point that possibly could save us from disaster and instability, but that falls within the parameters of the rule of law in the country. To kick off the conversation, is there currently, Rebone, a grouping of these elite that is currently able to pursue their interests within the current boundaries of the rule of law?
Unfortunately, as things stand, good evening, Tabo, and good evening, Mark, and the viewers at home. Unfortunately, as things stand, Tabo, the reality of the matter, the battle lines are drawn. You know, when we look at this current NEC of the ANC, you know, since their election in 2017, and what was interesting about this, that if you look at the ANC post, let's go back to the 1991 conference of the ANC after the unbanning, you know, and up to, we can say up to 2012, you know, a slate or a faction has always won conference outright. It's only in 2017 where we see that both factions then find themselves leading post the conference, you know, which I don't think that they were both ready. None of the two factions anticipated that they will find themselves leading together as a collective, and that's why it has brought this instability for them for this 5 years as they're going to their conference in December. We know that the Secretary General is suspended, and as things stand, I mean, if you look at the officials right now, the only person that is full-time in the House is the Treasurer General, who's the acting Secretary General, because the DSTV is sick. So the ANC has got so many problems at this present moment as they go to the 55th conference in December. But the reality of the matter, nothing can be done, and unfortunately, South Africans will bear the brunt of all these divisions that are taking place in the ANC, of all these factional battles that are happening. Because also at this present moment, also the other thing, Chabo, you must bear in mind is that you've got regional conferences, you know, that are to take place. You've got provincial conferences that are to take place building up to the national conference. So I don't think that there can be anything that can done can be done within the ANC at this present moment for these comrades to find each other. We know that the president of the Women's League, Rebone, is waiting for a sentence on the 1st of April, being the president of the Women's League and someone who's seen to be maybe closer to the RT faction. We saw when she went to court last week that you had the suspended Secretary General Isma Khashule there, you had the likes of Kal there. So there's nothing that can be done, unfortunately, at this present moment.
So the battle lines you're saying are drawn, and there's not much that can be done in this particular point to pacify either sides of this battle. Mark, how do we manage elite contestations within the context of our constitutional democracy in a way that protects the innocent and the human rights of all in society?
Well, I think that's a very good question, Tabo, to which I don't have an easy answer, because the fact of the matter is that whilst these elite contestations, as you call them, are taking place, there's a deepening social crisis in our country. Both of these factions claim to speak on behalf of poor people, on behalf of marginalized people, but both factions have their eyes anywhere but on the ball of poverty and inequality and unemployment and hunger and collapsing healthcare services. And the irony is that, both factions have corrupt elements in them, as a matter of fact. So it's not just contestation between the so-called RET faction and the Ramaphosa faction. Even within factions, there's contestation and there's corruption. And therefore, Tabo, my argument would be that the people of South Africa, civil society in particular, business to some extent, the churches are going to have to find a solution to this problem independently, and they're going to have to impose that solution on the political parties and on the ANC. Now, that may sound impossible, but I think if we don't build social contracts from below to restore health services, to restore education, to get food to people, then we are in danger of an explosion. And people keep on warning. The presidential expert panel warned that the conditions that led to July 2021 are still present. People like Moletsi and Mbeki are warning that it's still present. I would warn that it's still present. This report warns that it's still present. So I think we should turn our attention to the real crisis issues of our country.
Let's take a break. We'll continue in a moment. How effective have the rule of law strategies being promoted by the current administration have been in directly seeking to reduce the elite control over the resources of this nation? And are these strategies likely to fail, or do we have capacity to reach a political settlement? Do stay with us tonight and let us in on your views. 072-110-5584. Tweet us tonight at Newzroom 405. Back tonight here on In Focus, Newzroom Afrika, channel 405, with political analyst Rebone Tau as well as Mike, a Heywood activist. And we are discussing, of course, how do we navigate this latest development in a report that was released by the ISS as well as GAP, indicating that the elite are really at the heart and behind of the instability that we have seen, including the civil unrest that one can speak about, for example, that we saw in 2021. Rebone, to what extent is repression and political intimidation still active within this current administration, and maybe also the use of patronage?
I think one thing that when you look at this, the reality of the matter, you have two factions, right, together leading. And the reality of the matter is that the CR22 faction is not as brutal, I can say, as if you look at the Zuma faction, during his era as the president. Because at that time, you had what was known as the Premier League. The Premier League consisted of provinces like Northwest, Free State, Mpumalanga, and KZN, and a lot of people, were pushed out, out of the political circle. A lot of people lost their jobs. A lot happened, and one does not say that some of these things are not happening at this present moment, but things are much better compared to you can say since going back to post 2007, you know, and now that President Ramaphosa, I can safely say, I mean, look at how he even takes time, you know, to reshuffle his cabinet, you know, and you look at even that reshuffling of the cabinet. Literally, he did not remove anyone, you know, because you look at Minister Mboweni resigned, Minister Mkhize resigned, you know, and there was only the Minister of Defense who was moved from Defense to Parliament. So the paging is not that much. Unlike during the Zuma era, where we saw a lot of reshuffling, we remember there were midnights reshuffling where people were just removed as ministers and not being aware that they were removed. So he's really trying, President Ramaphosa, to really try and navigate, you know, but the question that he's going to navigate till when, you know, and unfortunately, you have what you call the Zondo Commission report. You know, we're waiting to see because he said not later than June, you know, he'll go to Parliament. So the question is that as he also goes to the 55th conference in December, as he's consolidating power, will we see a reshuffling, you know, and there's been reports that the Minister of Public Service, you know, that is alleged that she's going to go and join the IMF. So we'll see when she leaves for the IMF, if those reports indeed are true, he will have to obviously reshuffle, and we'll have to see that reshuffling, at what extent will President Ramaphosa go this time. But he's really been trying to manage the relations within the ANC.
So talking about trying to manage these relations, right, there's a sense that he's trying to a degree, right, promote the rule of law strategy. You're saying he plays the long game, allows the courts and the institutions and so on and so forth to play, directly seeking in a way to reduce the elite control of their resources. Is he being successful? Or is he likely to fail in this approach?
Right of the you know, when you look at the legal, you know, route, you know, it takes long. You know, we're all waiting to see. I mean, we saw even now recently. I was reading some reports yesterday, you know, about the July unrest, that we're going to see former premiers being arrested, some who are in his cabinet being arrested. We don't know, but there are those reports. So it will be very interesting to see, you know, because when you deal with law, you know, there are technicalities. You don't just wake up and arrest people. So far, I mean, the only person who has been arrested out of all this is only the Secretary General, you know, is Mahashul. Yes, and then you have Member Tablet Lamino on the issues of SASA, you know, with her case now have just been concluded and she's been found guilty. So things might take time, you know. We might not see any action between now and December, or we might see, we don't know. In terms of the NPA, how far they are, or the Hawks in terms of their cases, you know, we've seen the SIA reports that have been coming out, so we're waiting to see. And as I'm saying that with also the Zondo Commission report, you know, that certain investigations need to continue, you know, and some of the people who have been mentioned in those reports are National Executive Committee members. Some we know that going to 2017 were seen to be singing his praises, working with him, and today they are appearing also on those reports. You know, how is he going to handle all those things also? But we'll see. I think within the law how fast they can go, because they need to also have solid cases, you know. Yeah. Because the other thing that some will then want to play victim, and we've seen that the national chair of the ANC, Mr. Rebone Tau, you know, coming out in January saying that this report of the Zondo Commission must not be used to purge comrades as they go to this conference, you know. So already there's that pulling back, you know, and this is a cabinet minister that serves in cabinet, and I was listening to one audio clip when he was addressing members of the ANC in the Eastern Cape, I think a week ago, and he was calling Zondo very white, you know, and the tune has changed, and this one, and the interesting part, he was the Secretary General, you know, when all these things happened.
Yeah. Let's, Mark, look at, for example, how the July unrest matter came about, right? And there was again, an approach to say, well, this is the rule of law, so let's institute the rule of law, put it in place, promote this strategy. This is what needs to happen. We sent the former president, Jacob Zuma, to jail, and many are saying even now, what we are seeing playing out is a political settlement, because that strategy to implement directly the rule of law backfired. Now we are looking at the Zondo Commission. Is this strategy likely to fail? And maybe we'll look back a couple of months from now after June to say, oh, well, it failed. What we went for was a political settlement. Because some are arguing, Mark, that a more gradual approach towards establishing a rule of law for the elite is the way to go, rather than abruptly, directly seeking to send them to jail, might backfire on us.
Well, we're not directly sending anybody straight to jail. That's the problem, I think. I mean, despite all the important steps, measures, commissions, etc., that have been instituted, there's still impunity. People whose names we know are not in prison, billions of rand remain stolen, and frankly, I think you have to, it's probably the wrong expression, to bite the bullet on this question of consequence and justice. But you know, Thabo, what I want to say, and I agree with everything that Rebone has said, and I think that the measures that are being taken by President Ramaphosa to root out corruption, the work of the SIU, the Zondo Commission, all of that is to be commended. But there's a very serious danger, and that danger is the situation that exists for millions and millions of people in our communities, and the fact that people in our communities can be manipulated by these factions, as they were in July last year, to engineer a social explosion that could engulf this project in totality. And you've been talking about the rule of law as if there is one rule of law. But what I want to tell you, I measure rule of law by the lived experience of poorest people in the poorest communities in our country. And there isn't much rule of law there any longer. You know, just this weekend, a week ago exactly almost, a leader of Abahlali Basem Jondolo in Durban, Ayanda Ngila, was shot in cold blood tending to a food garden in a commune by factional ANC leaders. A few days later, masked police arrived at night at another site and shot and killed another person. I am hearing stories from doctors at Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital of a marked increase of the number of people admitted to trauma and to casualty who are dying or seriously wounded as a result of vigilante attacks, of mob justice, because of the fact that the police are failing in their most basic duties in these communities. We continue to have the danger of a xenophobic outbreak as groups try to turn responsibility for the crisis onto people who do not carry that responsibility. So, you know, the argument that I would be making is, much as this project of reform and anti-corruption and redemocratization and rebuilding of the state is worthy and to be supported, there is a danger that it can all be overturned if we don't pay attention properly to these issues of poverty, of hunger, of unemployment, and to the day-to-day experience of about probably 40 million people in this country.
Indeed, and that brings me to that other question, Rebone. Who has coercive power amongst the poor currently within these two factions? One would say maybe the RET forces would probably be seen as having more coercive power and capacity amongst the poor, and therefore they are using those grievances to negotiate their position.
I mean, the RET, if you look at how they've always operated, you know, in terms of even the numbers on the ground over the years, you know, they have always, you know, been closer to the poor in terms of their politics, you know, whether they would, and that's why you look at the ANC sitting at during the era now of Ismail when he was still the Secretary General, you know, there was a report that I saw at the time when he was still there, saying that the ANC is sitting at around 1.4, 1.5 million. And the question is that most of these people are from the poor background. You know, look at the ANC membership, you know, in the rural areas. You've got branches that are sitting at, some of them at 5,000 membership, and these are people that could identify with the RT, and the CR22 faction is not, in my view, really that grounded when it comes to grassroots, politics. The RT have mastered that game for the longest time, and that's why it was easy, to mobilize the people, when the July unrest happened, because they knew that some of these people are within, they are what they call food soldiers within the ANC, So that's the thing, that the RT, in terms of even their language, seem to be pro the poor, and President Ramaphosa has always been accused of being a white monopoly capital person, in a lot of things. I mean, you look at even the SONA this year, a lot of people were disappointed that the DA was celebrating this SONA by President Ramaphosa more than ANC members who felt that they could not even identify with this SONA speech, this year. So, but the result of the matter is that the RT seem to be more closer to the poor. Yeah.
I appreciate your time, both Mark and Rebone. Thank you so much for coming on tonight. That's where we leave the conversation. When we continue.